Today we're discussing the if statement and in its various forms. And whenever you talk about the if statement, you're really talking about 6 conditional operators, which are less than, greater than, equal, which is 2 equal signs rather than just one, not equal, which is exclamation mark and an equal, less than or equal, and greater than or equal. And also 3 logical operators, and, which is 2 ampersands together, or, which is 2 bars together. The bar is right over the backslash key on the keyboard, and not, which is just a exclamation mark, which sort of explains why not equal is an exclamation mark and an equal. The general format of the if is the word if, then a paren, and something that resolves into a Boolean condition. A Boolean condition basically means something that's either true or false. And then you have a curly brace and the body of the if, which is executed if the if condition resolves to true. And then you have an end curly brace for the end of the body of the if. And an alternate format of the if statement is the if, the Boolean condition, the body of the if, and then the word else, and then the body of the else statement. And basically the if statement, if it resolves to true, this is executed. But if it resolves to false, the else statement is executed in the body of the else. Well, to demonstrate this, we need to write a program that basically has 2 text boxes and a checkbox, and then a button that says trigger if, which basically executes whatever if we're using. And then I have 2 labels. One shows the condition of the if, and the second one shows if the if is triggered or not. So if we go into the event handler, the if, right now I'm just generating 2 random numbers between 1 and 10 and putting each of those in the text box of the 2 text boxes we saw. And initially I'm setting the if triggered to be false. I'm saying it's not going to happen. And then I set what the condition is of the if to A is less than B, and I show that in the if statement in the Boolean condition here, where I say if the random number A is less than the random number B, then the if is true, and we're going to reset the triggered state to true. So if we compile and run this and then trigger the if, we say if A is less than B, then the statement is true. And we show the condition here, and we show that it is triggered as true. If I run this again, I'd say if A is less than B, and A now is 2 and B is 1, so A isn't less than B, so this condition triggers as false. Another conditional value is a checkbox, which is sort of a built-in Boolean. If there's a checked property of the checkbox, and if the checkbox is checked, this checked property is true. And if it's not checked, this checked property is false. So if we re-edit the event handler for the if button and initially set the triggered state to false again, and then if we say the condition is the check button dot checked, which is the checked property, and we put that in the if condition, and so if it's checked, we reset the state to true. So if we compile and run this, I'll move it more to the center, and if we leave this unchecked and do the trigger if, we have the condition is the checkbox checked, and it reads as false because it's not checked. But if we do check this and then trigger it, it reads as true because it is checked. So the checkbox is sort of a built-in Boolean. You can also use the logical operator of not, which is the exclamation mark. And if you put an exclamation mark in front of the checkbox checked, it basically says not checked. So this will be true if it's not checked and false if it is checked. So if we compile and run this and then do trigger if, you see the condition is not checked, and that's true because it's not checked. But if I check it and redo it, this becomes false because it is checked. Not checked is false. The last thing we're going to look at is the logical operators of and or. And basically and or both check to see if multiple conditions exist. So in the case of this statement here, we're saying if A is less than B, and if the checkbox is checked, then the state is true and we trigger the if body. But both these must exist. So if we compile and run this, and I check this and do a trigger if, this is false because A is not less than B, even though the bool is checked. If I run it again, A is now less than B, so that's true, and the Boolean is checked, so that's true. But if I uncheck this and do a trigger, this isn't true on both cases because A is not less than B and it's not checked. In this case, A is less than B, but it's not checked, so that still reads false because we're using a logical and. Conversely, we could make this an or. Change this to or in the description and change this to 2 bars. And then recompile and run it. And now if we trigger it, this is false because A isn't less than B and the Boolean isn't checked. But if we try it again, still false, still false, still false, it's gone forever. And now we're getting equals. Now we have A is less than B, so that's true. And even though that's not checked, we get a true because it's A less than B or the Boolean checked. And if I check this, we're always going to get a true because this condition is always going to be true. So if I do this, it's true because both conditions are true. And now A is greater than B, so it's not, this condition isn't true, but this is true, and since we're doing an or, we still get the if triggered as true. Last thing we can do is do an else. And basically I've modified this to say if the if condition is true, which is that A is less than B or the Boolean is checked, then show it true. The if is true. But if this condition doesn't exist, then we trigger the else, the reverse of the if, which says, essentially puts the trigger state to say else is true. So if we compile and run this, and we click the Boolean, this is always going to be true. So we always get a true in here. But if we unclick the Boolean, and then here we see A is greater than B, and this is not true, so the A less than B or Boolean checked is not true on 2 levels, so we get the else is true. And even if we have the A less than B and that's not checked, we still get a true on the if because A is less than B. But if we have the A greater than B and not checked, then we get the else is true. And if once again, if we check this, we're always going to get a true because one of the two conditions is true and we're using an or. Well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson and learned a lot. And don't forget to subscribe.